Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, council. Ready?
Yep.
Good to go? Thank you.
Stage is yours.
All right.
I know you're going to tell us we have more money than we know what to do with, and
Who
expenses
told
are down.
him? Who let the cat out of the bag? Good morning. I'm sorry. Dennis Rajero, Chief Financial Officer. Thanks, as always, for having us here and allowing us to present and enhance and expand upon what the mayor presented in terms of the fiscal year 26 budget. As we did last year, we're bringing, and I think what's going to be the new normal now, we're bringing this to you weeks earlier, I think about 3 weeks earlier than most of the time that Dennis has been in the city of Tampa. And I would like to see that become the new normal, because I think it's been very well received, this extra time to discuss, question, research, et cetera. The budget that you're seeing now, it will be available along with the budget in its entirety at noon today on the internet. And first, let me ensure you have the presentation hard copy in front of you.
Yes. Yeah.
Outstanding. In that case, can I have the presentation up, please?
There you go.
Thank you very much. And here's our table of contents. It's mostly typical. We've added a few things this year. First, of course, we'll jump into the meat of it with the recommended operating and capital budget. We're going to break out some items for discussion because they've received specific attention by council, and I want to share some information. First of all, it's the fiscal year 24 fund balance that we've been discussing. That's about the 11.8 million in play. Some changes to the Social Action and Arts Fund being recommended to you, and also changes to housing funding we're recommending. At council's request, we've added a section with detail about the stormwater funding history. We'll get into that. And then, of course, as council is used to seeing, the capital improvement program over the next 5 years and the closely related debt program. We've gotten more and more detailed, as council knows, in the past in terms of our debt funding. I really think, again, it's led to a greater understanding and deeper and more quality discussion about both debt and the capital improvement program. And here it is. The net fiscal year 2026 budget for all funds is just under $2 billion, increasing over the current year due to items that you're used to hearing by now: higher salaries, compensation and benefits, healthcare costs, additional positions, of course, inflationary costs, vehicle maintenance, the continuing addition to the Community Redevelopment Agency from property taxes, and continued funding of the water and wastewater projects. You see here, as we always do, a breakout of the major funds, especially the two we talk about the most, the general fund and the enterprise funds. As has been typical, they take up about 3/4 of the entirety of the budget. We'll break those down further as we go through the presentation. Then into your special revenue funds, these include, for instance, your construction services, your housing, capital project funds, of course, internal service funds. These include such departments as fleet maintenance, those that serve customers internally, that serve other members of the city. The trust and agency funds, biggest section of this would be the Community Redevelopment Agency. This is funding that it doesn't belong to the city, but we caretake it. And then rounding it out, your debt service funds, your annual debt service fund payments. Breaking out the general fund and the enterprise fund, again, where we direct a great deal of our attention. See the general fund on the left. You also see that public safety takes up more than half, about 60% of the general fund in its entirety. You've got your back office functions, your central government. That includes the Revenue and Finance Department, Human Resources, Technology and Innovation. Those departments and personnel behind the scenes that keep the city running. Parks and Recreation, nice chunk there at over 10%. Public Works, Economic Development, including the Tampa Convention Center. All told, just over $708 million recommended for fiscal year 26. On the right, An even larger chunk, just under $814 million. These are the enterprise funds. As council knows, but it's worth reminding the public, these are departments that we expect them to run like a business. We expect them to make an air quotes profit. The difference, the primary difference between these departments and the private sector is when they make a profit, it's reinvested into their functions in support of the city. And of course, wastewater and water, over 3/4 of the enterprise funds, not unexpected. Solid waste, another heavy hitter at just under 17%. Our parking fund, as you know, is an enterprise fund, doing very, very well. And then a very slight sliver at the top there with our golf courses. Whoops, excuse me. The mayor referenced this slide, and at council's request, we're going to highlight it. This is a comparison of what the city is anticipated to bring in property taxes next year and what we anticipate we'll spend on just police and fire. As the mayor said, and I'll reiterate, of course, it's obvious, property taxes don't come near the requirement to pay for our public safety services in the city. If I'll direct your attention to the upper right, you see our total property taxes, a little over $380 million, but again, we siphon off nearly $60 million of that for the community redevelopment agencies. So from a city general fund perspective, we have $320 million to throw at just over $414 million for police and fire. Don't want to beat a dead horse, but it's obvious that property taxes simply don't meet the needs, near the needs of the entirety of the city, let alone the needs of public safety. I'll remind council and the public that property taxes are our largest revenue source, and certainly the largest revenue source in the general fund. So a very, very important revenue component, but by no means the only revenue component that we have to think about when we want to fund these services. This year, we've also added a slide with, that includes, Parks and Recreation Department of over $70 million. Again, it could be anecdotal, and I've said this before, but when I talk to members of the community or homeowners associations, typically there is a very, very big focus on property taxes, and I understand why. But I've met people who think the entirety of the city is funded via property taxes. And again, this brings it home that that's simply not the case. We use many other revenue sources, even though this is a very, very important one. Continuing with the general fund, and a slide and picture that's near and dear to my heart, our anticipated fund balance for fiscal year 26 and our history of unassigned fund balance back to 2018. I've congratulated council before. I'm going to congratulate you again. This is a very, very stable, confident financial picture for the general fund. My compliments for continuing, and my thanks for continuing to support this level of unassigned fund balance at 24%. Except, of course, as I always state, for those COVID years where you see a blip for 28 and 27%. Very, very important, as you've heard me state before, and I'll state again when we get to the debt presentation, an important metric for the credit rating agencies, an important metric for investors when we go to the market and try to sell the city's debt. A very, very good history and indication of what our reputation is, a conservative, well-thought-out, long-term financial planning model. As we did last year, and again, I think it's going to become the new normal, we identify in the general fund the major revenue components that have increased from the current year to the recommended budget we're sharing today. And you see property taxes, a little over $26 million. Judgment and fines at just under $16 million, and the primary component of that, and one of the reasons we've isolated it, are the school safety speed cameras that are coming online. This is a very nice side effect, but I want to reiterate that the primary purpose of those cameras is the safety of our children, but we do anticipate we're going to recognize additional fund, general fund money from it. Miscellaneous revenues, not a bad component, 6.5 million. Got a little bit of utility tax in there, a little bit of communication services tax. And at the very bottom, and I don't know if we talk about this often, but it's worth highlighting. This is the what we affectionately call the pilot and peel-off, the payment in lieu of taxes and the payment in lieu of franchise fees. These are fees and fees, I was going to say fines. These are fees and charges that the enterprise funds pay for utilizing the rights of way of the city. Again, if they're going to operate like a business, and Acme wants to use our rights of way, then we charge them, and we charge the enterprise funds for this also. It's an influx into the general fund, and it's not a bad it's not a bad amount, a little over $5 million. So total revenue increases, major revenue increases of just over $53 million in fiscal year 26. If I could direct your attention back to the property taxes very quickly, $26.2 million, we'll take it. It's not bad. It represents a 7-ish% increase in taxable value. It is less than we were bringing in just a couple of years ago, though, and I think it stands in stark contrast to the $400+ million that it takes to fund, police, fire, and parks and recreation. So we'll gladly take 26 million, but the amount of growth has been decreasing when you compare it to the last couple of years. All of this, I say, because it leads to a pretty constricted budget, and we'll get into more detail with that in just a moment. As we did last year, and I think we'll do from here on out also, we attempt to match the major revenue increases to the major expenditure increases. I think this has been a very, very useful tool also. At the top, no surprise there, compensation and benefits at $30 million in additional costs. New positions of about 4.5 FTEs, and I apologize for the jargon for the public. FTE stands for full-time equivalent. The best practice in financial and human resource management is to get a little bit away from the term position, because position can be full-time, part-time, seasonal, et cetera. So to make comparisons consistent year to year and locality to locality, we talk about full-time equivalents. So 4.5 full-time equivalent spots have been added in 26 at a little over $500,000. Again, you see the CRA contributions. The TECO streetcars increased $2 million. Hart Route 1's gone up just under $500,000. And then, as we did last year, we broke down the costs associated with either increasing the services that we provide right now, or increasing the cost, increasing the level of services that we provide right now, and the cost to provide new services. Again, our overwhelming priority is to make sure that the level of service the city provides does not go backwards, does not take a step back. And to do that, it's going to cost nearly $10 million in the general fund in fiscal year 26. A little over $2.5 million for increased levels of service. And of course, we have the ability, and we'll break all of this down for you. And then new services at $2.5 million. The last two line items there, increasing the level of service and increasing new services, excuse me. It's a little over $5 million. Again, in the great scale of things, not a lot. Not a lot. We have not had the opportunity to increase what we're doing, nor to bring on new services. Again, when you throw that $5 million and you juxtapose it against the massive funding of the entire general fund. So I will reiterate it. It makes for a pretty constricted budget. Moving into citywide position summary, and we provided this last year. Again, I think it's a very, very valuable tool. Here we break down at the lower half of the chart the additional positions we're requesting for fiscal year 2026. We also provide at the top of the chart a comparison to what our position count was at our high water mark in 2007, right before the great financial crisis. We're still 9 positions or 9 FTEs below that level. And you can see in fiscal year '26, we're asking for a total of 24.5 additional positions. And of course, from most to least, solid waste, fleet maintenance, and fire taking up the bulk of that. At council's request, we have provided a history of additional positions from 2019 to 2026. You heard the mayor reference portions of this in her presentation. At the top, over 122 positions for the fire department. And then I won't read each one, but you can see the overwhelming majority are concentrated in public safety, utilities, and construction services. Continuing with the position theme, you see our ratio of employees to population continues to decline. It has declined from 2022 to 2023 to 2024 to 2025. We are now the lowest personnel to population ratio among our peers, just under the city of Orlando. All of this, of course, while the city continues to grow and service demands continue to expand. I would submit this as yet another part of our conservative fiscal management philosophy. Continuing with comparisons, no surprise here, our city millage comparisons to our peers. We remain and have remained for some time, you see, the lowest millage of this 4-city comparison: Tampa, Orlando, St. Petersburg, and Miami. The competitive grant program, we like to show this comparison every year. We like to show it a little bit less this year. We had a great run. I don't think the run is going to end, but we have obviously hit a lull in fiscal year '25. You see almost $250 million in grants awarded since 2017, and the overwhelming majority of that in the 5 years from 2020 to 2024. I don't need to tell you some of the uncertainty associated with awards coming out of Washington. We still have a very aggressive application program, a very good monitoring program, but it appears feast or famine right now, and this appears to be a famine. We're not giving up hope by any means, and we'll continue to be very aggressive in what we apply for, but the awards have been pretty scant so far in fiscal year '25. And if I could drill down a little to 3 particular items: the fiscal year '24 fund balance, the Social Action and Arts Fund, and the Housing Fund. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you have a question, sir? No, you just stated. No. Oh, better view. Understood. Understood. Thank you. No questions. First, the fiscal year '24 fund balance. Council will recall these are the particular categories that we had identified, and in the middle column there, the particular amounts council had requested that we allocate this fund balance to. On the far right, you can see the mayor has recommended allocating the overwhelming majority of what council has requested to these particular categories. A little bit more than council requested for housing flooding assistance, and about half of the request for resurfacing. What that leaves in play, of course, is about $2 million. At this time, we would prefer to hold that in abeyance for a couple of reasons. I won't beat a dead horse about the uncertainty going on in the economy, in the city, et cetera, et cetera. We're very strong, but there is a great deal of uncertainty out there. We remain in negotiations with our collective bargaining units. And from a resurfacing perspective, we also want to make sure that we don't identify funding when we can that can't be spent very, very quickly. So all told, I believe we're recommending, again, a great deal of what council requested in those categories that council requested. Having said that, should council accept this and want to go forward, we can have a financial resolution ready to appropriate these funds, I think as soon as the next, can we get that done in time for the 31st, Mike? Yes. Copy. Because, again, not to get wonkish, but we'll have to appropriate the funding so we can spend it because it's held in a fund balance right now. In the Social Actions and Arts Fund, again, a constricted budget, and we have had to make reductions in this particular area from about almost $3 million. We have set aside some components and are left with our recommendation of $1 million for nonprofits. And as some of you know, we envision $100,000 for each council member and $300,000 for council in their entirety for a total of $1 million. We have excluded city assets on the presumption that council will want to continue to fund those assets at the same level in fiscal year 26. That would be the aquarium, the Strass Center, the zoo, et cetera. We have also, and I believe this was a council's request, segregated the development and economic opportunity funding of about $500,000. So in the recommended budget, those continue just as they are in the current year. Contributions to housing. Again, a very tight budget, and I'm going to try to walk you through this. I apologize, it may be a bit convoluted. At the top, you have the fiscal year 25, the current year general fund supplement to the housing program at $9.7 million. We have reduced the general fund component significantly and are recommending replacing it in fiscal year 26, you see here, from an existing housing fund balance. What we've done in the revenue and finance world is turn the housing fund into a revolving fund. So eliminating the need to reappropriate the funding every year and allowing more flexibility for the housing department to spend that funding as they need it. So from a process perspective, we think that's an improvement. What it allows us to do is mitigate the general fund supplement, you see, to the tune of $5.7 million. And then should council accept it, here's that $2 million from the fiscal year from last year's general fund balance. And then you see the total at the bottom. For comparison purposes, we're going from a little under 10 million to a little under 8 million. So a $2 million hit. What I would point out at the bottom of the slide is there are what we think ample opportunities for additional housing funding in the future. Of course, council, I believe, as the CRA board, has made a commitment of 30%, I think it is, in the CRAs. And then we'll have, I think, additional information to share with you very soon about the Community Development Block Grant for disaster recovery. A little bit of background, council I think knows this, but for the public, this is an over $700 million grant that Hillsborough County has received associated with the storms last year. Yesterday, the County Commission approved their plan to send to the Housing and Urban Development office in Washington. It's up to HUD now to approve that, and it is overwhelmingly housing-centric. We don't know yet how much, but we anticipate the city of Tampa is going to get a significant amount of funding from this grant, primarily for housing purposes. So again, I think there's opportunity in the future, but eyes wide open, want to be very clear, we're looking at a $2 million reduction in housing funding from the general fund in this recommended budget. And moving into stormwater, again, at council's request, we've added both a kind of a 50,000-foot view of stormwater, and then, again, going back to 2015 and 2017, respectively, a history of revenues associated with the two assessments. First up, I'll put a plug in for the service assessment rate study. We're working on that right now for possible implementation with the fiscal year 2027 budget. Of course, we'll bring council along every step of the way, and ultimately it will be council's decision. This is the service assessment for operations as opposed to the improvement assessment for capital projects, which we'll get into in just a minute. I believe you heard the mayor say, Stormwater, we've invested $350 million in making Tampa more resilient since 2019. And I believe she also referenced investing in just under $40 million over the next 5 years. New and replacement vehicles you see as the fourth bullet of $3.3 million in fiscal year 26. And give the general fund credit where credit's due. We had an ongoing subsidy in the general fund of $2 million for the stormwater system. That increased to $3 million in the current year, and we're increasing it yet again to $4 million in the budget that we're presenting today. Drilling down into the service assessment, again, this is for operations. Here you see the history since 2015 of that assessment, along with the revenues, along with the expenses. Starting in 2015, you see it became effective in 2016. You see the bump there. We also had a loan from the water department to do some stormwater projects. And as we started collecting the revenue in green, for the most part, you see that the expenses have pretty much kept pace. Now, again, it's worth saying that stormwater carries their own fund balance, and also I'll reiterate that the general fund continues to provide a supplement. But a pretty, I'll say, static and level and consistent picture since about 2017, about 2018, of inflows and outflows in the Stormwater Assessment Fund. And again, at Council's request, you requested a history of the improvement assessment revenue since its inauguration in 2017. And here you see a nice uptick up till about 24, where we've kind of plateaued out. Again, these are for the capital projects associated with the stormwater program. Moving into our capital improvement program as we do. You see our 5-year plan here, a little over $1.7 billion and a little over $420 million just in fiscal year 26. No surprise, as is typical, you see the majority in the utilities and transportation areas. Although I will point out at the top there, the CRA has a nice chunk, and then fire rescue, especially over the course of those 5 years to the right, over $125 million. And as we typically do, we highlight major projects that we're working on, both by category and in each district. I won't read them to you unless you'd like me to, but you'll see many repeat performers from the current year as these projects continue to be worked on and done. Pipes at the top, fire rescue at the bottom. Parks and recreation, technology and innovation. Facilities, especially their decentralization plan, 40th Street. Quite a few mobility projects. And as we do every year, we've also identified these major projects on the district maps. It's available online. And District 4, District 5, District 6, and District 7. And if council's ready, into our debt program. Thank you. And again, this is a nice 1-2 step, I think, because as council knows, and for the public's awareness, the debt program is tied very, very closely with our capital improvement program, because much of the funding for CIP comes from our debt. It's really good news. It's worth repeating. You saw the mayor's slides, 7 credit rating upgrades since 2019. Congratulations. Genuinely, I always like congratulating both the mayor and council about these very, very good credit ratings, and congratulating everybody in the city. It truly is a team effort. It certainly isn't Revenue and Finance doing it on its own. I'll remind council, and for the awareness of the public, at the top, that issuer credit rating is the equivalent of our FICO score, if you're familiar with your personal FICO score and how that goes up and that goes down. This is an absolutely outstanding FICO score for the city. The two on the right, Fitch and Standard & Poor's, have given the highest you can get. You can get no higher than AAA. The one on the left, Moody's, and we'll keep working on it, the second highest, AA1. Just an outstanding credit profile. And then you get into the different issuances, the water and sewer bonds for our pipes program, the non-ad valorem bonds. Again, we just issued with council's approval, a little over $60 million. Our stormwater bonds, our utility tax revenue bonds, and our sales tax revenue bonds. So what the credit rating agencies do is, of course, they go into each individual issuances, and as I've said before, you got to keep earning it, all right? What have I said? They don't set it and forget it, so we've got to prove ourselves constantly. And then they amalgamate that information and come up with our overall credit rating. And speaking of our recent non-ad valorem debt issuance, these are just some of the very, very positive comments that went into Moody's and Standards and Poor's ratings for that I think it was $66 million issuance. Large and diverse tax base. We're very, very fortunate to be where we are with the people we are. Fund and cash balances. Standard & Poor's, very strong reserves. Again, one of the reasons that we continue to emphasize our fund balance and our reserves. Robust long-term planning practices and policies. We take pride in the level of foresight that we have in the city from a financial management perspective. Again, eyes wide open. Want to let council know of potential debt issuances that are coming in the future. Again, we just issued a non-ad valorem issuance. We have more on the horizon. You see a total of just over $250 million sometime over the next 3 to 5 years. We don't anticipate issuing these until 3 years out. And you see in the second bullet for both of these items, timing to be determined based on project schedules and or spend down requirements. Again, I can't emphasize enough, we don't want to issue debt and begin paying interest on money that we're not using, money that's not working for us. Water and wastewater debt, again, continuing the pipes program. $764 million sometime in the mid-future, again, based on when the Water and Wastewater Department can use this funding. And as council is aware, probably the most recent large one we've continued to talk about is the solid waste debt. Again, in the short term, we're going to get rid of those 2 mini debts and issue a solid waste bond to absorb all of that debt for the next couple of decades. And here you see a 30-year fixed rate solid waste refunding revenue bond. We really, really like this slide. Council and the public have seen a form of this slide in the past. We wanted to drill down a little bit to the short and midterm as opposed to the long term. In the past, you've seen a plateauing and then a dramatic drop in the non-ad valorem annual debt service. This is what we pay every month for our debt. And as we've said before, and as you see in stark relief here, after fiscal year 2029, we have a very, very conservative glide path to fiscal year 2035 and beyond. What's that mean? It means once we get through the next couple of years, there is a great deal of debt capacity for non-ad valorem debt issuances, should council and the mayor at that time choose to take advantage of it. And also, quite a bit of relief in the annual general fund debt payment. So this is a very, very good debt plan, in our opinion, for the general fund. And here, by department or category are the anticipated debt issuances for the non-ad valorem program. You see at the bottom right, Council, that $252 million we referenced earlier. And we've broken it up, best guess right now, into the individual debt issuances. Again, we don't anticipate this for some time, but it doesn't hurt when you talk, I think, when you're talking numbers like this and the number of projects that this entails, which we'll get into in just a moment, to give everybody the information again, so everybody can start planning. And again, eyes wide open, our philosophy here. Fire Department, $136 million total on the far right. Public safety, other public safety projects, making up, well, again, the overwhelming majority. At the bottom, you've got mobility projects at about $36 million, some general government projects, and parks and recreation projects. This is a 50,000-foot view in your presentation, and on the next few slides, we break it down by particular project and those particular debt issuances. So I want to reiterate, we don't have a particular fiscal year identified for these issuances. But again, as part of our long-term plan, we like to plan this out. We want to know what the inflows and outflows are, what we've got to do ahead of time to gear up for these issuances, both in terms of the market and in terms of council and the public. Getting ahead of the information and educating what we would like to do and why we want to do it. And I won't go through them item by item unless you'd like me to. They're in your presentation. And I'll just hover on this last slide, again, with the totals by project program for each of those particular issuances, and again, the total of $252 million. And wrapping up, here's the budget calendar. Again, I think the revised timeframes associated with sharing this information and well in advance of the workshops worked out last year. I think it's going to continue to work out. I'd like to see it be the new normal. I think council would too. We've got 2 workshops so far scheduled next month, and then the public hearings in September. And again, the budget will be available at noon today at this site. And a very big thank you. I always appreciate you indulging us and letting us get into a little bit of detail in what is a very large budget, the 49th largest in the U.S., I guess. It is extensive and expansive. It's complicated, so thanks for giving us a little bit of extra time to go through it. And of course, over the next couple of weeks and months, we look forward to going into ever greater detail with you and the public. Thank you, Council.